Hello, everyone. Welcome to podcast Who Am I with William and myself, Stephen. Today, we are going to be talking about trust, loyalty, oaths, and promises. I guess we would more call them promises these days. But if you look back in history, they were often called oaths. Like you make an oath, you swear an oath to the gods or to each other, and that was I guess, it was almost like the basic contract between anyone really it's a promise, isn't it?
To me, an oath sounds like a verbal thing. I don't know
Yeah.
if that
Mm,
is
okay.
necessarily the case, but yeah, we want to get into not only spoken promises but also written promises like contracts.
Yeah. No, that's important to distinguish, I guess, isn't it? Um, yeah, I never really thought about that element to it, but yes, an oath is more of a spoken thing. Promise more of a spoken thing, but promise can be written down. So yeah, I guess I've been thinking about this concept for a few weeks, based upon some of the I've been exploring it in my own writing. And it's just been on my mind how, again, culturally and individually, how we, I guess, value these things. I guess that's probably the root of it for me is once upon a time, if you broke a promise, that was it. That was you, that was, I guess you would have a complete reputation of being a promise breaker. Like that's how serious it was, I guess. From what I can tell, again, I wasn't there in history, but if you read back over various things, it seems like it was the value of a promise. If you broke it, it was hugely shameful, hugely big consequences for
Mhm.
it.
Didn't some people cut off your hand if you broke some law,
Yeah.
and that would then be a sign to everyone forever that you're not to be
Yes, true.
trusted. But you're
Yeah.
right, it's almost as severe in that sense that your reputation is gone forever because it whatever you did gets spread around in a
Yeah.
small knit society. Nowadays, you could just move to another city and pretty much start over. But we're
Yes.
thinking. I think you're also thinking of like villages in the Middle Ages, for example.
Yes. Yeah. Like I guess starting off with just a simple, um, I guess trust-based promise, being like, I'm going to watch your farm for a week, back in the day or whatever, while you're away going to market and come back. And now if the farm is in an absolute state when you get back and that person hasn't kept their promise, whatever, you're never gonna kind of you won't likely deal with that person again. So in order to benefit, I guess in some way, keeping promises and these sort of verbal contracts or written contracts. I guess that's why we ended up needing written contracts, isn't it? I guess is that the verbal
Mhm.
ones um, uh, were too easily broken without consequence. So I guess we go
Yeah,
back, yeah,
with a written
like
contract, you have evidence. You
yeah,
may want another witness
yes,
or then you may want a neutral party to arbitrate and to actually enforce the contract. A contract often contains punishment for people not upholding their end. And I find this whole trend, this whole movement of what contracts have turned into sad,
yeah,
because it's quite negative if you think about it.
yeah,
Um, the way I feel safe that you're going to do what we agreed upon is that you suffer if you don't.
yeah, yeah,
I will feel justified in my revenge to hurt you if you don't do what I expect you to do. That's not a great motivation, but
no,
unfortunately, that is what laws and contracts are like these days. It's not like I love you, I want what's good for you, I will do my very best for that, and so you can trust me.
yeah, yeah. I guess yeah, it's like we always talk about how a thing is just a thing. And then what we do with it is what makes it good or bad, or positive outcomes or negative outcomes, etc. So the root of keeping a promise should be love, as you say, like or trusting someone. Trusting someone, I trust you because I care for you, love you, appreciate you. And then the other person's like, oh, I appreciate and care for you too, and I love you. I'm going to keep my promise. And to us, I guess that seems simple. But I guess that's humans beings, for whatever reason, we're not like that. But I guess the responsibility does lie with us of who we trust. Like we should do our research. We should know the person enough. It's not a 100% guarantee protector or anything, but where we place our trust is very important. Like I tend to have like not a one and done rule, but like you get one chance, and then if you mess up, cool, whatever, that's fine. Don't care. That's like again big mess ups, not just like little things. And then the second time, if it happens again, then I'm like, okay, that's fine, like whatever. Like I can find other people that I need to do that thing or whatever. A simple weird simple one, this is a bit bizarre, is things like helping with my board games group. Like something simple. If I'm away and ask someone to help with my board games group, like come pick up the board games and take them to the club night, trusting someone to do that, like, isn't that big a deal. But then if that person then, if they're sick or something, then fair enough, whatever. But if they then forget and that's it, they've forgotten and the board games don't happen. That's never happened. Everyone has been very trustworthy, which is good. But if that did happen, I'd be like, okay, cool. I'd probably ask someone else next time. But also would potentially ask them again one more time to see. I guess another example is another weird example is medication. I had my medication with the company pharmacy, and they went over there to get it. They didn't have it. They're like, sorry, we don't have it. Come back in a couple of days. And I'm like, well, I need my medication. So I go to the pharmacy, get it from there. Tempted to change pharmacy, but it's like, no, it's fine. Went to the same pharmacy again next month, and they were like, nope, sorry, we don't have it. You'll have to go to a different place again. And that was it. I was like, okay, well, I'm done. You have not fulfilled the contract, the trust. So I give up. But everyone has different thresholds. Like, I mean, what do you feel about that? Like, what do you feel about?
No, I like your approach. I have a similar experience that I can share. A few weeks ago, I sometimes go on this platform where people buy and sell little things or services, but it's mostly stuff. But in this case, I was trying to look for opportunities to tutor someone in math or computer science. I like to do that from time to time. And I found this guy who said, I have a test tomorrow. Or no, he didn't even say that. He said, I have a test coming up at university in computer science. I need help preparing for it. And I looked at the material and I thought, okay, I could teach this stuff. So I wrote him, and then we had a quick call on the phone, and then he said, the test is tomorrow. I need your help tonight. And I thought, wow, that's unprofessional, but okay, sure. I guess I can make that work. So we set a time and a price, and then we met on Zoom. And I thought, this platform is pretty open. They have the system for an insurance, you could say, that if the product doesn't arrive, you get your money back. So there's this intermediate account that you can send your money to first, and then the platform will take a cut. So it's up to you. Do you want to spend that extra fee? But in the case of a service, I don't see any way of doing that. So it was either he trusts me by paying upfront, or I trust him by giving the service upfront, and then expecting him to pay afterwards. I guess we could have done half payment first or something, and I might do that in the future, because it turned out that he's not trustworthy. You would think that someone that I just sat with for an hour explaining his computer science test to him successfully and correctly would have enough connection with me to pay afterwards. But he didn't, and so I wrote him, and it just didn't come.
That's horrific. Yeah.
Until he blocked me on Telegram, where we were communicating, and I thought, first of all, it felt bad, but then I thought, okay, the money isn't that much. It's okay.
Yeah.
Sacrificing 1 hour, well, I actually spent an hour before to prepare. Sacrificing 2 hours is okay. So if this were someone who needed me over a long time, then I could say the first one is a freebie to test your trust.
Yep.
And then you pay me after the first time. And then just because you paid me, I have enough trust for the second time, and so on. But this was a one-off. And apparently to him, that was an opportunity to get away with
That's
receiving
crazy.
something and not
Yeah.
paying.
And it's an interesting thing because that then taints your trust in people, or it
In
can taint your
general, yeah.
trust in general. Yeah, like
Mhm.
what's the term? Is it confirmation bias, where you assume that because it happened one time, it's going to happen all the time, that type of thing,
I
where
mean, a
because you
black and white,
black and white,
or
I don't know.
all or nothing.
Yeah. So this is what I was very intrigued about. Is this is a prime example of um how it affects us, I guess, individually. Again, who am I as a person, and how it affects my view on the world by having these situations, because it can easily, very quickly, isolate us from people. Like that's what was fascinating to me, is that if you get like you've been, again, to use a uh I guess a bit of a basic term, but you got screwed over. Like that's it. Like you got robbed. You got robbed.
Sure.
Like when you think about it. And that could easily make you go, well, never doing that again, never trusting anyone again. But you've clearly got a good attitude towards it, being like, okay, you know what? Yes, it was my time and energy. That's ultimately okay. Now you adapt, you approach it, you take it from a positive viewpoint that this isn't going to stop you from doing these things. It's going to help you take responsibility and still trust, but trust in a way that is adapted. I guess that's the difficult thing, is that we have to then still learn to trust. Because if we don't, the consequences are worse. This is again what's intrigued me, is that like trust and fear kind of come in hand, I think. When if you or Mr. I guess the abuse of trust. Because then you fear to be taking advantage again.
Yeah.
Like that's a horrible feeling. Like it's a horrible feeling being taken advantage of like that. So you start to mistrust people. And then yeah, you withdraw from that and you distance yourself from people and you become isolated because you're afraid to feel vulnerable again. Again, all totally understandable, like all completely understandable reactions.
Mhm.
I've been there hundreds of times myself and had to really push myself to still trust people. Like again, at my worst, I was isolated for months because of just social anxiety and fear of just different things. Um, and yeah, had to try and find people that I could trust with, again, my personality and who I was. And um, again, yeah, it requires I guess, an energy, a pushing forward against the fears and the mistrust.
Can you imagine a world where working people have no contracts, or just any business people have no contracts, and yeah, then a certain trust will be necessary. Or what we're talking about is where trust builds up over time, right? Because
Yes,
you dealt well with me in a small matter, let's take on a bigger matter, and then so on.
yes,
But what is a contract? It is a legal uh, thing, a document that allows you, if someone breaks their agreement, it allows you to go to the court and then get that person to be punished, usually financially.
yeah,
Um, so it's like there are two children expecting a parent to intervene
yeah,
when the children are being unfair to each other. And this is interesting in the context of cryptocurrencies, because the cryptocurrency market is still very unregulated. Its regulations are amassing all the time right now. Um, but I have been enjoying the unregulated part of it, because it's just people using their instincts to decide whether something and someone is trustworthy or not. And there's another interesting part to my story. So after we had this hour of tutoring, the guy said, "Oh, I see on your Telegram profile that you're into cryptos. I'm thinking about investing myself." So he's totally new to it. And then I explain a bit, what's necessary, and if he wants, I can help him with that, because I enjoy teaching that as well. And then he said, "I don't get how you can trust the platforms, the people, the system, the technology. And I said, yeah, it's different than the traditional finance world, but I can explain that. It's actually a different kind of trust. You don't trust that there will be an institution like a court or something from the government. You trust that the technology makes it impossible for people to get away with a free lunch, so to say. And it's so ironic that that comes from him, because he's not even able to keep a promise over a tiny amount of money.
That's very
And
interesting. Yeah.
so that goes back to what you said about fear. If you're afraid that a system will be unfair, then you can't trust it.
Yeah. And you tend to adopt the thing you hate. So you hate you start off usually by not liking the fact that people can rob each other, like that people, because it's not regulated as such, or that people take advantage of others, like that. You don't like that, and then you end up becoming jaded over months, years of your life of having these experiences. You can become what you didn't like in the first place. Like this person, I'm sure at various points in their life was like, oh, it's the injustice of people being taken advantage of, and is now taking advantage of people because
Yeah,
they think it's the only way to do things. They think it's the only way, like the only way to survive,
right.
survival of the fittest. If I don't screw other people over, I'm going to get screwed over,
The
and it just
bullied the bullied becomes the new bully.
yeah, it becomes a perpetuated cycle of like mistrust, and then trying to get your own things yourself. Um,
So should we talk about the positive side, how to break the cycle?
Hell yeah, let's do it. Well, I was thinking, I was thinking about how it all begins, like in terms of societal. But let's jump to how to break that. And I guess we'll kind of talk about a little bit about the adaptation, but I guess how to adapt is the question: is how do you make sure that the positives are happening when it comes to trust and not the negatives?
Yeah.
Um,
So like you said, your worldview can become very grim, that you believe, oh, people in general are not
yes,
trustworthy and they're just out to get their own advantage.
yeah,
And that's true to an extent. We are all selfish somehow, but it it is good now and again to just look for new circles, look for new
yes,
friendships,
yep,
because sometimes you'll just be surprised that, oh, actually there are good people out there with strong character who will just uphold their agreements, and who will even, like, sometimes I can't think of a concrete example, but maybe you agreed on something with someone, and like he'll drive you home after the event, and then he didn't know that you moved house and that driving you home is a lot more time involved than he expected, and he does it anyway because that is what you agreed on. You know what I'm getting at? So even when you're not precise about your agreements, to
yes,
to uphold it anyway is a true sign of character.
yes. Yeah, I guess that's the interesting thing is the lack of information. So, like for example, with you and that guy, you he should have really declared the test for the next day. That information should have been there to help you make the judgment call. So, in a situation like you just described, um, it's important, I guess, for us to make sure we give as much information as possible before we ask someone for their trust, or vice versa, so they can make an informed decision. Often communication is so important in these things.
Mhm.
Um, and then, yeah, as you say, I guess acknowledge the value when someone does trust, like does fulfill your trust. So our brains so easily pick up on, as you say, the negative or the things that hurt us or things that are fearful. But we could have 1,000 experiences of good trust with people, but not even acknowledge it. Like we don't even acknowledge it. Not even just like, someone does commit to driving us home. We say a quick thank you and then get out the car. Done. Like they've gone out their way to do something, and we just expect it, and it's just part of that trust agreement. But actually, we probably should, and maybe not, because maybe it get annoying. But to really just say to them, look, I really value, I really value, I guess, gratitude in a way. I really value. I'm really thankful for the to be able to trust you to come pick me up and to do what you've said you do, because that's important to me.
Sometimes when someone does something good for us, we feel bad. And where does that come from? I think it has to do with the expectation of reciprocity. You know, are you able to accept a favor without feeling the need to repay the person in some way?
Oh, now that is a minefield of discussion. I mean, I think there's the I mean, maybe you're referencing this too, but in my head, my immediate jump to, even though I don't watch it that much or watch it that much in the past, but the Big Bang Theory to do with the Christmas presents,
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember that.
where
Yeah.
is it Penny gets Sheldon a Christmas present or something, and then
Yeah, what you've given me is an obligation.
yeah, and that's an interesting concept where yeah, like giving fulfilling a trust scenario and not expecting anything back.
Mhm.
Like you talk about favors. So yeah, should you then be ready to give that person a favor? And should that person expect a favor back? Like, is that how that should be? I guess.
The Italian expression for please, well, like when you're asking for something, is per favore. So as a favor, literally.
Oh wow.
Or
Okay.
Spanish, por favor.
Oh yeah, por favor. Yeah.
We're talking about fear that comes when trust is broken, and fear being the motivation for controls like contracts and punishment if agreements are not upheld. And where does that fear come from? And like pretty much every fear, I can trace it back to identification with something or some idea, and then fearing that belief, that identification with that idea, when you lose it, that you die or that you stop existing. So in this case, when I send you the money, I expect you to send me the product in perfect condition and all that stuff. But I might not buy the product. I might not send the money because I'm so afraid that you will not uphold your side of the bargain, and so I won't go enter the agreement at all in the first place. I think that's what a lot of employees do, rather than going into their own business. You know, even though they hate being an employee, they do it because there's less risk involved
Yeah.
than with becoming an entrepreneur. But what are we identified with? Well, with the money, you know, losing the money is like dying, or it can feel that way. Or I don't know what else.
Yeah. It's like I guess it's like a personal. We take it as a personal attack on our being, like
Mhm.
on who we are. And we feel like yeah, like we've been attacked. Even though literally, even though it could be a system of just like um let's say it's an automated payment that goes through to like Amazon or whatever, and then they're supposed to send out the product, but it doesn't get sent, and then you have to contact them and stuff. It feels like, yeah, like we've been personally attacked. Um, which then again feels like our I guess our existence is belittled and not um valued, and therefore we don't exist and we're dead. Like it's again it's a bit of a jump, but it's true in my opinion. Again, when you first explained all this stuff about
Yeah,
how
that's
it,
true. That's true. Sometimes I just blurt out the things I've learned
yeah,
without building any bridge from
one to the next one. Yeah,
people's everyday experience to this insight. It can be
yeah,
a leap.
yeah.
But I did publish an episode recently on our insane search or need for safety, and I call it insane because it is based on false beliefs
yeah,
and false identity. So I think it's just terrifying to see how many people feel the need for safety. And this is a nuanced, obviously, everyone needs some kind of safety, physical, emotional, financial, health. Um,
yes. There needs to be safety nets, is what I call it. I call it safety nets available to us, or we create our safety nets through different means. But we shouldn't rely upon them or be we shouldn't be trapped by them.
To give you an example, if you're in a room or if you're on a bus with someone and they cough, do you feel like your life is in danger? Nowadays, I expect that a lot more people feel that way than they did 5 years ago.
Oh, it's fascinating. Like I still get a twinge. Like even
Yeah,
like beforehand, before getting the COVID stuff, nothing. Like, someone coughs near me, whatever. Now someone coughs near me, I literally just like, and then I have to go stop being stupid and just carry on.
yeah.
Like
That's evidence
it's
that we've been conditioned because
yes,
there's no, as far as I understand, there's no objective proof that someone coughing is any more dangerous than it used to be 5 years ago.
yeah,
It's in our minds.
yeah, yep. Um,
So we want
it's
safety. We say, no, it's not good enough that I wear a mask. If I feel endangered, everyone else has to wear a mask. That's another example
yeah,
of everyone has to, live according to my whims so that I can feel safe.
that's interesting. Yes. I guess group fear um creates individuals having to comply. Um, but yeah, safety is interesting because like I think there's a cycle that I've seen people go through time and time again, and I went through it myself, is that you have your own personality. Okay. So for example, me as a teenager was a medium risk taker. So I take risks of different things, but not too much. Like, just, live within the bounds of society's created, push them a little bit. That's it. Um, and then I get older and realize, well, the world can be scary. I had a bit of emotional problems, mental health problems, and then start to fear a few things. And again, condition myself to or I guess not condition myself because that's an active thing, like without realizing and became conditioned to
Mhm.
fear stuff. And then retreat to safety nets, safety places, into your room or not going outside as much. Um, that was a safe place. And that's for short term, that was great. That made things work. That was protected me. But then the key happened where actually I can no longer take risks. I no longer feel the
Mhm.
ability to take any risks and become almost like in a state of nothing. Like it just like again, you want to talk about feeling like death is imminent. My whole, I guess, yeah, being was safe, but actually I felt the opposite. I was having anxiety issues. I felt afraid of everything and had to realize that pushing against the want for safety is beneficial. And that is an interesting concept because that requires trust in self. So I think that as you were talking about safety nets, I was thinking about how we've been talking about trust in other people, and that is part of this as well. But actually, we have to learn to trust ourselves that we can accomplish these things. So, like again, going outside and um, going to a pub or a bar or something and just having a drink with some friends. Like at one point in my life, that was impossible to do because well, I thought it was impossible to do because I was so afraid and everything.
Mhm.
I had to trust myself that I could do it. I didn't think I'd do it. I thought, no, I can't do it. I'm too anxious. I'm too ill or whatever. Again, there's a thin line. Sometimes you are too ill to be able to do it, but you have to be very self-aware of what you can and can't do, and trust that you can do these things when the time comes. Um, and I guess goals are like that. When you set goals to push ourselves beyond, I guess, safety barriers, and then you learn to take risks again over time, or you stay the same. Again, I guess these are choices we have. We can just stay in our safe little environment, becoming more and more ill, usually, um, or push against them. And that's what I've seen time and time again. I've seen people learn to push against them and start to learn to take risks and almost enjoy them, like enjoy the risks and
Mhm.
the confidence that comes from that and the accomplishment that you can feel from pushing against those safety barriers. And then again, as I said before, you learn to trust yourself more and your judgment because that's kind of what it comes down to as well. It comes down to being able to risk management, being able to identify what is okay to do. Where you go, actually, you know what? This is even if I lose everything in this situation, all my money, everything, do I
Mhm.
still do it for the value of doing the thing? And it might actually give me even more of what I wanted. What's the sort of cliche phrase they use? Where it's like, don't think about what you can't achieve, think about what you can achieve, kind of thing. That sort of mentality, where we often go, oh, I can't do that or I can't do that. Like, imagine if we all constantly thought about what we could do and do it rather than not do it. Um, It's again all fascinating concepts.
You mentioned losing everything. I feel like that's happened to me at least twice in my life, and it's just something that you perceive. For example, I lost a lot of money once, um, and the other one I can think of is losing mental health. Yeah,
Yeah,
losing that foundation that you thought, oh, well, you didn't even realize that it's just there. It's just a
yeah,
given, and so I can always depend on it. And then one day you can no longer depend on it, um, and then you need to reevaluate what you identify with. So, am I my money? When my money is gone, am I gone?
yes.
Or am I my health? When that is gone, am I gone? And then you start to realize there's something more to me,
Yeah,
and
you
that
do.
it turns out that was superficial.
Yeah, the intrinsic value of just being who you are as a person has more value than everything else.
And the fact that it can happen more than once in your life is also interesting,
Mm.
because you might believe wrongfully that, uh, oh, I've overcome this huge hurdle in life, and now everything is going uphill.
Ah, yes, yep,
Like when you were talking about going out and that being a huge confrontation, a type of confrontation therapy. I did that with when I first was no longer able to work. I went on a lot of trips, and it was weird because in Germany, when you are ill, you have most people, or at least I was raised this way, to fear the judgment of other people when they see you outside of your home. You
yes,
might get in trouble for having fun while you're ill. Anyway,
yes. Oh, so weird.
anyway, my therapist agreed that it is good for my confidence and therefore for my mental health to go on trips and
Yep.
just don't care about what other people might think when they see me. And nothing bad ever happened from me going on trips.
Yeah.
So I visited all these different countries within a short time, and it was a challenge. I was sometimes very anxious right before I left, but every time I came back, it was a boost for my confidence.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it wasn't the only thing I had to do to recover mentally. But anyway, years later, I have another mental health crisis,
Yep.
but it's just in a different area. It's something that had been covered, had been not dealt with so far, and then I dealt with that. And so I don't expect this kind of work to be over.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Is that often when I talk, I guess I talk like it's fixed when I talk about different ways of doing things. That's gonna like, oh, you've spent a year or two or three or four, or whatever, to gain the confidence in this avenue, and that's it. And it's like, no, no, like at any point in our lives, we can go through a almost identical or even actual identical situation that causes us to have to then do it all again. And that's fine. That's okay. Like that's life, that's constant reevaluation and repetition. And when we come out of it, again, the confidence that is gained, at least I hope for people, that you've achieved these things, you've overcome the fears, um, and the worries. It's a beautiful thing because it's like a hero's journey. Like
Mhm.
we always look at stories and we value those, and the hero goes through a struggle and fears that they're not good enough or that the powers won't be strong enough, and then they kind of they overcome the villain or the difficulty or the challenge, and we do that on a daily basis and don't even acknowledge it. Like it's so bizarre. Like we constantly do things that are the equivalent of fighting a massive villain to save the world, and we do that daily, and we don't even acknowledge it. And
Mhm.
like with our everyday lives, and I think that's a good way to um help us through fears is to acknowledge the again we talked about earlier the positive, the ways to value a situation in ourselves and how well we've done. Like I do a thing with a few people like positive affirmations. Like
Mhm.
remind yourself that you are lovely, that you're a good person, that you are beautiful, that you deserve to be happy, these kind of things. And over time, the brain and ourselves realize that it's true. Like it's not a lie, but we don't believe it often. We don't believe these things, even if they are true. And so we have to learn to believe them and then realize that they are true, that we are, our value is ourselves. We don't need anything else. We can want it and add to it, and that's lovely. But we are enough as we are. And that's again, that situation, going back to the original sort of topic of trust, requires trust in people. Like we're constantly having to search, I think. I think searching is the way we have to do it these days, and that takes a lot of courage. Because like you talked about your example with the person who's didn't pay you after you given a couple of an hour and then an hour of your own time to research and stuff, we can easily mistrust. But if we search for good people and then take it slow, I think is a good way of putting it, isn't it? Taking it slow.
Yeah.
Be able to see their what's the right term? See their true nature. I think. I mean, often it's for the extreme cases. Again, we could talk about psychopaths and these kind of things where it's almost impossible to tell if they're genuine or not. But ignoring that, most people within society that you meet, if you give it, I would say 6 months, that's sort of my sort of thing. If you get to know someone over 6 months, you will see their behaviors. You will see there will be cracks in what they do or don't do that will show you if you want them in your life or not. And so you build up that friendship to start off with, get to know them, meet up with them, these kind of things. And I think that's the same for dating. I think that when we date, I think in this society, you want to talk about promises and trust and these kind of things. Dating and I guess a relationship, and then we obviously have the institution or beautiful promises of marriage, depending on what perspective you have, because I have a very cynical opinion of marriage at times, but actually a lot of people have a very loving, caring, beautiful image of marriage. And I guess that's down to experience. So I guess, yeah, trust in those situations can be fascinating because I think your view on this, but I think we jump into relationships and like I'm talking about romantic relationships, I guess, way too quickly in society. I don't know if that's what you sense or not.
Yeah, you said something about 6 months.
Yeah.
I've heard from several people, I've also experienced it, that is a good time to wait until doing anything serious, as in making promises to someone, because that is often how long the honeymoon phase can last. I mean, there are different kinds of honeymoon phases. That you can have another one
Yes.
when you get married, but when you first meet someone, you are over the moon
Yeah.
for maybe 6 months, and then you start those filters, those pink glasses. No,
Rose tinted glasses.
right,
Yeah.
start to fade, and you start to become more objective about your partner,
Yeah.
and then you
E
can be more rational in your decision making.
yeah. Even in a friendship, actually, I was thinking about like obviously we're talking about romantic stuff, but even in a friendship, it can be very exciting to start off with when you meet someone new, and you banter off each other, and there's lots of different, and in all fairness, that's all what a romantic beginning should be anyway, shouldn't it? It should be a friendship ultimately.
Yeah.
Obviously with other things going on, but yeah, like that excitement fades to a degree. Like again, there's always going to be elements of that, hopefully, in any friendship, and you'll have moments where you'll, rekindle moments of that excitement. But you'll also, I guess, it'll become routine. Not necessarily mundane, because that's, I guess, a perspective, really, but routine. And whether you enjoy that routine or then realize you don't enjoy that routine of the friendship or romantic relationship, I guess is what makes or breaks it. And I think, again, like we say, that lasts about 6 months. It's probably to a year. Again, everyone's different, but before you kind of see again, before you know whether this person is, and that requires you to also be very insightful, or to be more insightful, because we can so easily blame the other person, but actually it's our responsibility to not lie to ourselves and only see the good in someone. Like we can obviously sometimes only see like the good in someone and be like, oh, but they were always nice. Like they gave me nice things. Like they bought me dinner, but actually they talk to you like you're trash. Like behind the scenes, they tell you you're rubbish or that you're an awful person, but they buy you nice things, and you're like, oh, that's fine. They love me. They show me that they love me through those that way, and you ignore the warning signs, the red flags, as we call them these days, of someone's behavior. So that very much is important for us to acknowledge and take responsibility. But it's hard. That's not easy. That's very difficult when, again, sometimes the heart wants what the heart wants, and the chemistry wants what the chemistry wants in our brains. And we trust people and find ourselves trapped in situations that we can't get out of very easily. And that's why I always try and tell people to be slow these days. That's always I guess my number one advice, which is ironic considering how in the past I would jump feet first into everything. I think I'm better at it these days, but well, no, I know I'm better at it these days. But I think that's what I try to give everyone when it comes to these type of dynamics with the promises you make. But yeah, where did it come from? Like this is again, we're talking about I guess let's talk about marriage, I guess, in a way, because this is what's intrigued me recently in some of my writing as well, is what I guess led us to as a society
to
to
creating marriage in the first place.
Yeah, to create marriage. Like,
yeah. Well, let's think about it this way. When you meet someone, you talk, you do stuff together, you spend time, and so talking is like exchanging thoughts. Before you get to more physical affection,
yeah.
because that binds you, and you don't want to take too much risk. So you first get to know the person at a distance, you could say, and then see how compatible are your thoughts, your beliefs, your habits, your expectations. And then you take one stage at a time. I mean, this is oversimplifying, obviously.
Yeah.
But you build trust step by step, and trusting someone is kind of like making agreements, making promises.
Yeah.
And you realize this when someone suddenly does something that is totally out of character, and then you think, I don't know you anymore.
Interesting. Yes.
And suddenly I don't want to kiss you anymore for that reason,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
So and then marriage
is
a one distinct step that is actually part of this whole progression.
Yeah. I guess it's yeah. I mean, again, this is just thoughts and chaotic like discussion points. Is that I guess going back to like thousands of years or tens of thousands of years, the expectation. But I guess if before marriage existed, for example, let's say again, this is just hypothetical. I'm not a historian or sociologist. I don't know.
The last ice age was 10,000 years ago, just as a reference.
Yeah. So it's like when you get into a relationship, usually there's, this is again just a generalization, going to be kids involved if you're getting into that physical relationship with someone.
Then you're really bound, right? If there are kids involved.
Yes. And I think that's maybe where marriage came from, is the fact that if you're not bound together, then it's easy just to forego your responsibilities with something higher, or you're more likely to forgo your responsibilities. Obviously people still do it, obviously,
right.
in marriage.
So in the interest of preserving the next generation's well-being and existence, the institution of marriage and I guess forcing two people together, or binding two people more closely than they would if they were just in it for fun, seems to be necessary, or at least an important factor in that.
Yes, that's where my sort of brain kind of goes to. I'm sure there's like hundreds of other just like points of why it would be created. Again, control. Like, I mean, I guess that is what we're talking about anyway. But in terms of like, whatever the origins were, we know that it has been used at certain points in cultures and history as a romantic thing, as in love. That's what is important for marriage. It's to bind two loving people together, and that's beautiful. And then it's also been used for business style like dealings where you marry your children to each other to gain
Oh,
advancement within society,
it
or
sounds like India, where the parents talk and arrange their children's marriage.
yeah, I mean we did it here in Britain hundreds of years ago and stuff.
Sure.
Like it happened
Or
pretty much every.
when royal families intermarry, so that their countries feel like it would be a betrayal if they went to war with each other.
Yeah, all these kind of things where it becomes more of like a political contract or a business
Yeah.
contract. Um, and so obviously that's generalizations and specific situations and whatever. So it seems like a very what's the right word? A very perceptual institution based on your perception
You mean
how you perceive
superficial?
marriage.
Or,
Um, in a way, but more to the like marriage is based on your perception is what I'm getting at. So to some people, it could just be, and whether it's
sure.
right or wrong,
Mhm.
obviously, is the intention behind the situation. So actually, if where consent is in place, so for example, let's say you're 20 years old and your parents come to you and say, "We want you to marry so and so from this family because it's going to help advance our family," and you go, "Okay, you know what? Let me go meet the person and we'll discuss it and whatever." You know what? In those situations where again, and that person gets consent as well, gets to meet you, then fair. It's where that consent is taken away, where that becomes very like, well, it's evil, in my opinion. It's completely evil. It's using people as as not necessarily products, but uh as contracts almost, and again takes away their choice. And choice to me and as a person, I think is really, really critical. And so where marriage is concerned in that contract, if all those things are in place, and whether it's for a business thing or whether it's for love or both, then fair enough. But it's again, it's when it's tainted and it's like a child's being betrothed to another child and expected to then marry when they're like 18 or whatever. That's messed up. To me. Again, like it just feels very evil. And if I listen to my gut. But then when it's done in love, again, when it's done as a loving thing, it still has all sorts of minefields as well. Because again, can you trust this person that you're marrying that they're going to keep that contract? Again, the contract can be there to hopefully the promises made. But they have choice. They don't have to.
Yeah. If I get married, I first want our expectations to be very clear about what that means, because, like you said, it depends heavily on your perception.
Yeah.
Another modern example I was thinking of that is just for economic convenience is to get a visa for a person from a poor country to be able to live in a rich country. They get
Yes.
married.
Yep. Yeah.
Just That's just
Yeah.
a business arrangement.
That's a good way of Monday way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, yeah, you're right. There are different definitions, different use cases for marriage, and so that needs to be totally out in the open. Like, what exactly are you thinking about this? Um, and the ability to keep a promise is also tricky. So I've been thinking of this hypothetical example. Say this girl that I'm in love with, and she with me, has this has had really bad experience with smokers, or no, let's say alcoholics, and so let's say I don't drink, but in this example I drink from time to time, and she
Yeah.
says, can you promise me that you will never drink once we're married? And that's not the right approach, right?
Yeah.
Because no, nobody can.
Yeah.
you We said that contracts are not a promise that this will happen, but that this should happen, and if it doesn't, then you will be punished. And maybe that's what a marriage is like as well. This, I mean, the contract won't specify. There are marriage contracts, which
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever want to get into that personally, but um, again, it's a sign of mistrust from the beginning, right?
That's an
If
interesting one. Yeah, yeah. At what point does trying to save yourself from having promises broken and protect yourself turn into being completely mistrusting and creating a relationship of mistrust? And
yeah,
often when you accuse people of things, even if they're not doing them, usually if they're not doing them, if you accuse them enough of doing that over time, they end up doing it because you're badgering them, like because you're accusing them. The psychology is that they just go, oh well, screw it, I'll just go and do it.
yeah,
Like if you think I'm doing this all the time, then I'll just do it anyway.
yeah.
So again, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Yeah, like trying to clarify like such a um I guess such a heavy contract in a way, because again, like in society, again in the UK, in Western society, um, marriage is traditional. So it's been an institution that's been around for centuries. Um, and I personally don't believe people even know why they do it.
Hmm.
Like people get married. There will be people that do. There will be people that like genuinely. Like I went to a marriage recently. To be fair, a couple of marriages recently, and beautiful, incredible, good people that I know that doing it for what I would class as all the right reasons.
Hmm.
Um, but I see in general population, most people that seem to get married are doing it because that's what's expected of them. They're expected to once they've lived once they've known each other for a certain amount of time, so one of them should propose, one of them should get married. That's the box ticked. They've done it. They don't even necessarily discuss how the marriage is going to be. When we're talking about things, we are both quite heavy overthinkers to a degree. We value such a situation as getting married to a point where we will think about it a lot and think about what we would want from it and hopefully listen to what a partner would want from it. And I do think that still happens, obviously with general people, that does still happen. But it's um, I guess the what's the right word? Again, the expectation when you get married, things change in a way. Like again, there's different circumstances here. So, for example, let's talk about our upbringing. So, I was raised as a Mormon, and promises and oaths are quite um, valued, quite put upon you, expected of you
Yeah,
through different
very common.
situations.
Yeah.
Very common. That's why this is again also intriguing to me. Um, but then when you get married, you're not supposed to live together before you get married. You're not supposed to like have sex before you're married. All these different things. And to me, that seems now older, seems very backwards
Hmm.
because you could get trapped quite often in a dynamic because you've not been able to again see the true person. Like you've not been able to. I know so many people in the church that once they've lived together, their spouse completely changes.
Hmm.
And we're taught that it's wrong to like live together beforehand. It breaks the sacred right of things. But actually, I personally think that people should live together for a year or two before they agree to get married, because you will see, because marriage is such a strict contract, especially in the Mormon Church, where it's for eternity. Like it's a the promise is a heavy promise, beautiful one when you think about it, but it also again it comes with consequences. And those consequences create fear more often than love. To be fair, fear of breaking that contract,
Yeah.
fear of um, letting people down, fear of not being good enough for God because your marriage didn't go the way you wanted it to. And it's again, in my opinion, evil how it's promoted and how it's blanketed in this love and romance. And it's almost like the Disney concept of that it'll be forever.
Hmm.
And again, that is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, that is a great thing and it should be promoted, but also it should be discussed that people could change. You need to be understanding that this person that you're going to be marrying may not be the person you expect. And so there should be time taken.
But what you're saying makes sense to me. You never know someone fully. So what am I trying to say? So no matter how well you get to know someone, living together, even having children together, will not guarantee safety
Yeah.
with that person in the future.
And people change.
Right. So you might say choosing this one point
Yeah.
to make a promise to always stay together is kind of arbitrary,
Yes.
because yeah, you're constantly changing and you can never fully guarantee something about your future.
Yeah. My opinion is, again, trust is important. We should trust, we should take steps, risks, all those kind of things. But we should also be very compassionate, merciful, and loving and understanding that people do change. And if both people are doing that, then and communicating, because at some point you might just be like, you know what, I don't love you anymore. Like I don't have that same commitment that I had. So you communicate that and know that you could do that, and then work at it, obviously, try and see if you can build together that love back. But if not, to both understand that it's okay. Like it's like again, change happens. People like should be allowed to have that freedom without the consequences of feeling so punished and
Mhm.
so hated um for making what is actually a good choice. It's a good choice to remove yourself from that situation.
We can make many parallels between getting married and economic contracts.
Yes.
As I said earlier, in an ideal world, there's no need for contracts, right? Because people are
Yes.
just honorable.
Yes.
They do their best to fulfill the agreement.
Yeah.
They admit when it doesn't work out, and they will, you know, make amends, maybe pay
Yeah.
to make it okay again. And in a marriage, so getting married publicly is very important, that it's in public, that there are witnesses,
Yeah.
so that when you do, for example, sleep around, that you might get caught.
Yeah.
So there are people who actually know about your agreement to your wife, to your spouse,
Yeah.
or the parents of the couple are like the judge that will make sure that they uphold, or
Yeah.
that they will get punished, whatever. So it's kind of sad that there is this similar trend of mistrust and fear and the need to punish each other if things
Yeah.
don't work out the way they projected in their minds. It's a need for control.
Yeah. I think that's the key there is need for control. And obviously that's in a way, again, that stems from in a way a good place because we need to be shaping our own destinies, our own lives and whatever, like in a way. But when things don't go the way expected, again, when you try and control it or push against it, often it can have the opposite effect and make you more miserable. So you have to kind of go through the grieving process. Again, these are all, it's easy for us to say in some ways, but we've been through different uh traumas of our own where we've had to go through these processes of loss and realizing that pain and go through process of pain and letting go. And that happens, I think, in all situations. So whether we haven't been through the situation of marriage ourselves, then like we've still experienced other things that give us insights, not to the same level as someone who
Mm.
has been through it, in my opinion, but most close enough to be able to discuss it. So I hope no one, again, judges us for being able to just discuss these things because I think
Yeah.
we're intellectual and emotionally in tune enough to know how these things work. And I think that's important to, I guess, understand as individuals that for those of us who necessarily haven't been through it, we can um still talk about, still discuss, still share opinions and beliefs, and make sure we all understand that it's from a place of love, that we're just trying to love ourselves, love others, and prepare ourselves because again, we may in the future still get married. Like that may still be an option. I don't think I will personally. But I guess I believe in more of the verbal contracts, I guess, of
Mhm.
marriage.
I for myself, uh, I like what you said earlier, that marriage can be done for all the right reasons, and I still have the intention and the hope to do just that.
Yes.
I think it can be a beautiful ceremony, but yeah, to think of it as a business contract is counterproductive, and I wouldn't do it to to fulfill the expectations of family and society.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, we hope that you out there can also enter promises and have the right interpretation and perspective on them to get the most out of them, and not for fear or revenge or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So thanks for being
Thanks
here.
for listening. Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye.